Welcome back. Great to have you with us on The Full View. The COVID-19 infection rate is down and South Africa has now moved to lockdown level 1. But many workers continue to work from home. Companies are realizing there are benefits to that, but also risks. At the same time, some workers and companies may be struggling to make the transition back to a physical office. To discuss tonight, we're joined by Ntombizone Feni, Executive Director of Change Management at 21st Century. Ms. Feni, thank you for being with us. It's been very interesting with so many people working from home. There used to be this fear, that people would abuse the privilege. In practice, there's research that suggests that people are working harder, they're being more productive. Do you think it's been an eye-opener to begin with for many businesses?
Yes, certainly. First of all, good evening to you, Francis, and your listeners. Thanks for having me. I think it's been an eye-opener. Let me start off with the cliche that one thing definite about change is that it's constant. So COVID is not the only change that has become the catalyst for change in the workplace or for employees, but certainly it's an eye-opener on the level, at a strategic level, that it almost compels employers to introspect and to reflect on their internal capability or ability to be agile and to adapt, not just adapt, but navigate the change in terms of performance management, in terms of the organizational culture. So certainly it's been interesting, and the stats have shown that there's pros and cons, of course.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. I mean, there's more productivity, more emails being sent, lots of Zoom meetings, but people don't have that downtime, catching a cup of coffee at work. I think many are realizing that burnout is a problem as well. Are companies learning to manage that?
I think on the first part, in the initial phases of lockdown, a lot of companies were in panic mode and in the mode to try and transition to forced lockdown unless you were an essential service worker. So from that point of view, the transition was not a seamless thing, but it has become a priority for employers to think more about productivity levels and management of employees from a remote point of view, because the world is moving towards that model. So downtime is debatable also because a lot of us who were used to traveling for over an hour or hours just to work, or being stuck in long queues at taxi ranks, don't have to face that stress and that time. So you can start your workday earlier. So I think very importantly, it's about employers evolving to becoming more flexible in terms of an outputs-driven environment that doesn't require a time-based 9 to 5. So it's an outputs-driven environment where it's all about the outputs. Doesn't matter. No one is looking over your laptop to check if you're on Facebook or Instagram. It's about what outputs you deliver for the day. So,
which is important. In the end, that's what counts. So do you think this is a good thing? Are you saying overall, as long as it's managed, the move to online work is wonderful?
Yes, I think there's a balance because we are human beings, and inherently, the human touch cannot be replaced by 100% virtual or remote work. So what we've seen in global research, but also recently in South Africa, research is showing that employees and employers are talking about flexible working policies. So you'll see a lot more of that. That's going to become the order of the day. And blended working arrangements where the stats show that employees are open to working at least 2 to 3 times a week from home. So, of course, it's not applicable to all environments. You can't necessarily do that in manufacturing or retail or even tourism. So it applies to specific environments where work from home is possible, provided that the IT infrastructure and the telemetry is available to make that a possibility. But also, for me, a big eye-opener is organizational culture that hasn't always been on the forefront of human capital, and employees being the biggest assets to organizations. That's what we're seeing from a consultancy point of view is becoming a high demand for consulting advice.
So, and we're hearing this phrase that you use, hybrid model, over and over again. Finally, in terms of change management, I mean, some companies are choosing to recall workers. For the companies, they've got to get on top of a lot of things in terms of the health protocols. For workers, it can also be hard. We had a voice note from a viewer once saying that they needed therapy before going back. So months at home and then going back to work. A difficult change for many, actually.
Most certainly. So I think this is why, for me, it's a reflection moment for organizations, because you have to have an internal change management capability that can allow you to navigate any change. Right now it's COVID. Last year, the big buzz was AI, or the fourth industrial revolution. Who knows what's to come in the future? So change management is all about taking your workforce along with you as transition, transformation, and change happens. So communication, constant communication, transparency is very important, whether virtually or not. Those are the things that I think cause a lot of anxiety, where employees are not certain of how safe it is to be back at work. So that's where the regulations come into play. But also, a lot of people have faced a lot of deaths in their families. So part of an employee value proposition encompasses not just attracting and retaining employees, but their well-being whilst they're in the workforce. So that has to be a huge focus for not just human resources, but for management at executive strategic levels.
Yeah, lots for companies to think about. Thank you so much for your time. Ntombizone Feni, Executive Director of Change Management at 21st Century.